So this is the start of the Ikea Expedit Shelving system, and it's basically it's all set up here. You get the instruction book, obviously in several different languages, but it's a comic book. So what we're also going to look at is the different configurations of whether this is going to sit like this or like this. But it generally goes together about the same way. It's just a question of where we put the felt feet. And some people will compound a multiple unit out of several of these. The hardware kit with these, pretty basic. Now, if you're doing it wide ways, we're probably not going to worry about attaching it to the wall. If you do it tall ways, it comes into mind. Mostly peg construction, but we've also got a little bit that involves the Allen wrench, which we're going to double check here in a minute. So the vast majority of construction on this unit basically involves putting the inner rectangles together with the in subunits. And what those are going to involve are the sub-shelves that go basically that are pegged only. So we just peg only these things. We want to make sure that there's no other debris in the peg holes, and we don't want to hammer this. We just want to press it really hard. If you're going to give it a smack, you give it a smack. But we're going to have opportunities to press that together as we get the whole unit together. So this is all peg only at this stage. Okay, what may not be entirely clear in the stuff here is the way the spacing works on these shelves. It's not the same on the two modules that you're building. Each module has a thick side and a thin side. Hopefully you can see that in the video, thick side and a thin side. And the spacing is different. So it can get a little bit frustrating when you're lining up which pair of boards goes with which. So this is how one of them ends up looking. The other one's going to be here. It looks like the spacing is very close, and then when you're going to put these in, you're going to find that you're not getting the same length, or something's not lining up. That will be because it belongs to the other pair. So you might want to set those pairs before you get too far along in it, because you need them to end up flat for when the top piece goes on there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to position the other piece, but I do know that since I've already gotten this one together, I'm not going to have a problem matching pair like I did before. And I'm going to do, short side over here, long side over there. Now the width of these is of course all the same. And when I go up, these really narrow ones are part of what links the two large rectangles with each other on the end caps. Now these can either be end caps or top and a bottom, depending on how you orient the thing after it's been set up. Or if you are making a compound wall unit out of a bunch of these things, then you would orient it as you go. And at that point, we would be wanting to get into a little bit of regular carpentry of drilling the entire thing or running bolts through or something like that. But here you'll see this is where our anchor bolts will be going. And a lot of the IKEA stuff is 4mm. I think one of the last things I was working on was actually a little bit bigger than that. This was a 3/16, so it's a little bit large. We're going to end up having to use the IKEA tool to tighten these things down. But if you have an impact driver, it's going to speed things up. The thing is, IKEA's got a little bit away from these things being a standard size, so you're not always going to be able to do that with your impact tool. So with both of these together, you can see how there is not meant to be any kind of a matchup with the spacing on these. And if we have this flipped around the other way, then it just means that it looks that way when it's backwards. Okay. They're not meant to have the spacing go straight across, so don't frustrate yourself trying to make it go that way. I can flip this so you can see that it really just ends up the same either way. With the close piece flipped, you can see that you really don't get a shelving alignment when you do that. It's meant to be a mismatch. It's just part of the styling on it. So what we're going to do is I'll add pegs to go between these. Now I am going to have to, I believe, flip it back around so that these end up level. And so there is a right way and a wrong way to do that. We're going to have to flip that back around. But what it doesn't do is go like straight across the way it does on some of the others. But again, this is unique to this particular the Expedit piece, and you can see in the picture how those shelves are not all consistently at the same height. You also cannot set or adjust those. Once they're in, they're in. That's where the peg holes are. It's not a situation where you have multiple peg holes and then put the shelves where you want. So with these pieces together, and again, this is a little bit asymmetrical too, in that this section is wider than this section. See how this one's a little bit narrower and this one's a little bit wider. So the orientation on the side pieces is going to matter. And chances are the first time you put it on, it's going to go wrong and not line up. Now once we get that lined up, if you have the right size bit for your power tool, you can spin these down and spin them down pretty tight. If you are stuck using the Ikea tool, it takes a little bit longer, but we just kind of set these on here and spin them down by hand. But I've got to set the camera down to do that. You can see how I'm spinning that one-handed. I'll have to set the camera down to get it to tighten up. But we've got pre-drilled holes, so you know it's not like you're having to power drill a lag bolt. But this, you can see how loose this is, and then as we get those tightened down, this whole thing's going to tighten up and firm up. With one side or top on, depending on how you orient this thing. Again, it can be flipped around different ways, and multiples can be put on top of each other. My best thing for this is not to try and put these on sideways, but to flip it all the way around and put the other one on and do it that way. But when we're flipping it around, we got to make sure that we're not going to scratch it. Now this particular one is going to end up being with one of the long sides down. So at that stage, what I'll do is we're going to get some little foamy feet here, and we put some of these on, and you'll see little circles in here. And what we do is they're just basically sticky foamy feet, and we put them on the corners because the corners stick out a little bit more. You'll see that, but we put these here, and then there should be enough that you can put some in the corner, in the center too. But mainly what I'm looking for is trying to support this corner. Now some people will not put them on a corner, they'll stick them in here, because you'll notice that the foamy feet kind of sticks out too. So it's personal preference on that. And there it is, all done. Sorry for the light distortion, but one of the things that we did was, I guess I was a little bit premature in figuring out which was going to be the bottom according to the way the customer wanted it. So we've got to get a little clean off for these little feet things, because I had to pull them off and put them on the other side. As long as it's freshly done and you got to pull them off and redo them, that's fine. If it's been sitting there for a while, it can be a bit of a problem.